Waiter, good to know, thanks. Father, does she look like someone who'd drink peppermint schnapps? Waiter, reading from a spoken word karaoke screen. Not at all. Father, when she was 7 and all her friends were clamoring to watch The Little Mermaid, Gabby wanted to watch Ziga Vertov's 3 Songs About Linen and Michael Snow's Wavelength. Gabby, laughing. That's such bullshit. But it's not bullshit, it's true. Her first Halloween costume was the green-cloaked, nystagmic albino from Kenneth Anger's Invocation of My Demon Brother. Although the solemn ritual enactment of these fabricated scenes from Lizzie McGuire does not constitute good writing, it vividly demonstrates the zeal with which Gabby and the father will sacrifice anyone on the altar of their tiny cult of 2. And although this obtains for the dramatis personae on any given father-daughter night, it is particularly true for this particular Gabby and this particular father on this particular night. For a moment, for just that one instant in the sudden flash of lurid light refracted through the gore-encrusted windows, every woman in the bar, every daughter, looks as though she's wearing a Kappa Delta Bid Day crop top, and every father looks like a scrofulous widower answering the door. Father, we're doing gravy shots all night, bruh. He slips him a $100 bill. Just keep them coming. Gravy is, of course, the fiery, high-proof vermifuge that's considered the national drink of Chilesio. The waiter exits. Conscientious ethnographers, the father and Gabby, are both frantically scribbling notes in crayon on their placemats. In marked contrast to the explosive, id-driven chaos out on the piazza, there's nothing remotely spontaneous about any of this. It's all a very predetermined, choreographed, almost liturgical sequence of events. So let's not confuse or somehow conflate these abstract figurations, these refined, highly aestheticized pantomimes, with the very real stomach-churning violence that's taking place outside. Nor should we forget the cool, detached, sublimated shuffling of the lettered tiles by divine hermits levitated slightly above their seats in the floating casino on Lake Little Lake. That primordial, cosmogenic activity from which arises all phenomena. That shuffling whose consequences are emitted into our collective imagination and externally as empirical reality. From this infra-language come both those poignant folk tales that stream across the spoken word karaoke screens at the bar Polpo on father-daughter night and the murders and grotesque mutilations that take place out on the piazza. But what does it say about us as a society that admits to these nightmarish massacres, these orgies of violence in which deranged young CMF street soldiers, these ex-musical theater kids, slaughter and mutilate one another? People flock to the bar Polpo, formerly King Kong Couscous, on that very piazza each and every Thursday night to recite and reenact folk tales about dying fathers and their heartbroken daughters, those wrenching melodramas streaming on screens, those scabrous weepies, as the screenwriter Jeremy Pixar, War Inc., Bulworth, the Lemon Sisters, has christened them. Scabrous weepies. It is, to quote the brochure, like enjoying a night out with friends at Applebee's as the Kishinev pogrom rages outside. No one knows how they got there. The level of violence is so high that it's too dangerous to travel anywhere within Kermunkachunk right now. To even attempt to traverse the piazza in order to enter the bar Polpo would be an act of suicide. Via the brochure, it's like just finding yourself somewhere, as if in a kind of fugue state. And surely it's occurred to many of the fathers that, as per the folk tale, they may not get out alive. Yet here they are. Whatever it is that's drawing crowds each and every Thursday night, the contrast between the Gemütlichkeit on the inside and the barbarism on the outside, the free-flowing gravy, the emotionally titillating screens, the cacophony of language, etc., etc. Father-daughter night is financially the Bar Popo's home run. It's cash cow, and presumably the same obtains for Bar Popo franchises around the world. There's a $100 cover charge per couple, hence the father slipping the waiter that bill to the gravy shots. Just keep them coming. Father, looking up from his notes. You know, I'm surprised you went with the Beacon. I was sure you'd pick the McLuhan or the Rosa Luxemburg or even something from First Orgy. Gabby, Mavis Beacon is the greatest typing teacher in history. Gabby takes a drag from her vape and gestures evocatively in the air with it. Gabby, so I thought it afforded us an opportunity to obliquely allude to, via big character poster, the professor's lovely line from his introduction about a shimmering moire field of pre-discursive keystrokes. Father, fuck the professor. Gabby, what's wrong with the professor? Father, I don't want to get into all that now. Let's have some fun, have some drinks. We'll talk about it later. Gabby shrugs. Gabby, okay. There's an awkward silence. Father, the waiter's a good guy, don't you think? Gabby shrugs, non-committal. He's okay. Father, he's very talented. You know, he seems genuinely terrified. Gabby, he should have been. I was seriously considering actually slitting his throat. For a moment, I really felt like one of those rabid lunatics out on the piazza. They both crack up and fist bump. Father, you know he went to Stage Door. Maybe you two were there at the same time? Gabby, how do you know he went to Stage Door, Father? It says it right here in the brochure. Reading. Stage Door Manor Performing Arts Summer Camp, Loch Sheldrake, New York, summer of 2000, 2001, 2002. Gabby, who'd spent the summers of 2007 and 2008 at Stage Door Manor in Loch Sheldrake, whose woods are inhabited by Kabbalists and mercenaries, makes note of the waiter's attendance without further comment. On the placemats, an accretion of crayon-doodled equations, multiplex movie times, spur-of-the-moment rewrites of dialogue from the spoken-word karaoke screens, stick-figure caricatures of other fathers and daughters, etc., etc. In the brochure, a kid-friendly connect-the-dots chart of the constellations in which we find, facilitated by the psychoactive effect of the gravy, the supernal palaces upon which the architectural design of the floating casino is predicated. Vague shapes moving out on the piazza are discernible through the gore-encrusted windows, the scintillating oblong shadows of people running past, blurs, smears, and Rorschach blots, holographic cowboys and squid, plumes of pink ink, the ghosts of that extinct lumpen proletariat of coolies and cycle rickshaw drivers who now, in time-lapsed blue-tinted zigzags, cross-hatch the swamp-like phosphorescence of this dreamscape, the iridescent shimmers of flashes of light that we associate with a transient ischemic attack or mini-stroke. Smells waft in, raw sewage, melting plastic, charred tulips, computer duster, Cinnabon, etc., etc. The waiter returns with the drinks and exits. Later, Father, reading from the brochure. If a super-hot Chilesian mafia faction street soldier offered you the enucleated eyeball of one of his sub-factional enemies, you would A, throw up, B, politely say thanks but no thanks, C, immediately put it on ice, in the event that his enemy is still alive and the eye can be reattached by an ophthalmic surgeon, D, wash it down with a shot of gravy to show that you're down and passionately make out with him. Gabby, She thrums her fingers on the table, pretending to mull it over, then D. They crack up, fist bump, etc., etc. Everyone's having such a good time, especially Gabby and her father. We're all on the merry-go-round now. It's all fun and games, but there's a foreboding certainty among these habitués that in the last act, death, ever perverse, always disguised as a giant hydrocephalic child, will clamber aboard, walking counterclockwise to the clockwise motion of life's carousel, turning what could have been a perfectly nice afternoon into the cataclysmic centrifuge that separates our guts from our souls. The waiter brings another round of drinks, and shortly after that, another round, and then yet another. The father is drinking heavily, furiously. It could be just his incorrigible propensity to drink heavily and furiously, or perhaps he's still rankled, without even being fully aware of it, by Gabby's offhand mention of the professor earlier. Whatever the underlying cause, it's hard to believe just how much gravy the guy's imbibed at this point. Father, my queen, your eyes... Father, my queen, your eye burns with an alien light beyond my comprehending. Awful thoughts, dark as if risen from eternal night, are turning, ominous with my breath. The hostile band your soul so strangely fears has fled before you like the winnowed chaff. A curse upon desires that, in the breast of Mars's chaste daughters, bay like an unleashed pack of hounds, drowning the brazen lungs of trumpets and silencing their officers' commands. Gabby, Dad, you're so drunk you're reading the wrong screen. What we originally thought was the drone of speedboats orbiting the floating casino may turn out to have been the buzzing of the mechanomorphic mosquitoes who breed in the sunlit pools of human blood out on the piazza, who gaze narcissistically at their reflections in those crimson puddles, whose bite spreads a new mutant strain of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Male mosquitoes have pincer-like structures called claspers on their abdomens, which they use to grab onto the female. The male's reproductive organ, the aedegus, then everts into the female's vagina for insemination. The mating is quick, typically lasting no more than 15 seconds, which makes the vertiginous, lavishly filmed 10-minute mosquito sex scene in Meet Me in Kermunkachunk all the more extraordinary. Waiter, your daughter tells me you're a writer. Father, an anthropologist. Waiter, so what are you working on? Father, I don't really think it's something you'd be that interested in. Gabby, Dad, if he wasn't interested, he wouldn't have asked you. This is one of those rare instances when all the spoken word karaoke readers at the bar Popo have momentarily synchronized, i.e. have randomly fallen upon a passage common to all iterations of a folktale. Everyone. Gabby and I are doing research for an ethnography of the Chilesian Mafia faction, but it's also a book about fathers and daughters. Panoramic gestures indicating father-daughter night. Obviously, and on another level, I suppose it's a book about reading eye charts, karaoke screens, brochures, etc., etc. Although aren't all books about reading? I mean, in some phenomenological sense. Waiter, you were right. Father, about what? Waiter, I'm not that interested. The entire bar Popo breaks out into uproarious, derisive laughter at the expense of this doomed, alcoholic father who's reached the nadir of a collapsing career. See the professor's gratuitous but not inaccurate allusion to his book sales in the introduction. And who's just been unceremoniously dropped from the Ethnographers Guild Industry Health Fund for failing to earn the minimum annual income, receiving a particularly galling notification that began, "Congratulations!" He was such a small, delicate, refined boy, so lovingly devoted to his collection of Dresden figurines, thrown in among his coarse, snot-eating classmates in Jersey City who'd go on to become the great titans of publishing, the great cultural gatekeepers. And is this then the traumatic origin of this heavy drinking, of this sado-romanticism, this early uncomprehending persecution? In psychoanalytic terms, this was the boiler room in which Freddie offered him a way forward, a modus vivendi, this whole complicated, confusing business about puggles who arrive in spaceships, puggles as higher beings, etc., etc. Wait for your prom, he was told, when, coated in pig's blood, you'll bring the temple crashing down upon the Philistines. Mighty Mouse, king of the vermin. He hid from the snot eaters in that boiler room in an elementary school in Jersey City in 1962. This was the mountaintop upon which he received the tablets of the covenant, except that here they were 200 microgram tablets or microdots of LSD. This is at any rate how it's depicted in the manga and later in the anime. So committed is the father to this fantasy and so psychologically adroit he's had to be to survive, that he's able to transmute this abjection into a feeling of exaltation. He blows kisses. Meanwhile, Gabby's been taking an appraising sidelong look at the waiter. Gabby, so how'd you end up in Kermunkachunk? Waiter, I interned for 7 years at Don't Let This Robot Suck Your Dick Productions. Gabby, do you have an agent? Waiter, I'm repped by my Verizon Wireless customer service representative. Waiter, I'm repped by my Verizon Wireless customer service representative, actually. Gabby, nice. Waiter, I played CMF Street Soldier number 2 in Meet Me in Kermunkachunk. Gabby, can you speak Chilasian? Waiter. Gabby, what's that mean? Waiter, it means a little, but it also means injection site redness, fantasy. It means a little, but it also means injection site redness, fantasy suite, and YA fiction. Gabby appears perplexed. Waiter, reading straight off the screen but gesturing spastically to feign extemporaneity. There's an exceptionally high incidence of homonyms, both homophones and homographs, in the Chilasian language, resulting in a semantic indeterminacy that makes it nearly impossible to ever completely know what anyone is actually talking about, and recourse to context is of little help. It's this rampant polysemy that accounts for all the diligent stratagems Chilasians deploy to keep themselves literally on the same page, the spoken word karaoke screens, the big character posters, the murals at the airport, etc., etc. It's not so much the words themselves which tend to be functionally indistinguishable from one another, but the shape of the speech bubble that conveys meaning. There's a folktale about a drunken little gnome who threw a magic, i.e. inexhaustible, stick of deodorant into Little Lake, giving it its bluish-white mirror-like surface. And the genie of the lake, to punish him, caused the Chilasian language to be riddled with homonyms. There's a folk tale about a drunken little gnome who threw a magic, i.e. inexhaustible stick of deodorant into Little Lake, giving it its bluish-white mirror-like surface. And the genie of the lake, to punish him, caused the Chilasian language to be riddled with homonyms. For example, the Chilasian word for rectum can also mean rugulak. Means Gatorade, colostrum, Allen wrench, barebacking, be best, etc. And can mean Turks and Caicos, but also mush and gush. Father, aside to Gabby. Mush and gush is a mixture of mac and cheese, cream of mushroom soup, and tuna fish that Rachel Horowitz's mother used to make. Rachel Horowitz was my girlfriend at Brandeis. Gabby, I know who Rachel Horowitz is. Waiter, do you want to hear something absolutely crazy? In Chilasian, the same word means cheesy gordita crunch, Doritos Locos Taco, and Crunch Wrap Supreme. Gabby, that's insane. Waiter, winking. You know, when Chilasians clink glasses to make a toast, they say, which means literally, relapse. You know, when Chilasians clink glasses to make a toast, they say, which means literally, relapse. Gabby and the father clink glasses. Gabby, father. And they slam down their shots. Waiter, it's just a fascinating language, which means I can't go for that, no can do. Also means Miss Brooke had that kind of beauty which seems to be thrown into relief by poor dress. Which typically means, don't be afraid of death, Winnie, be afraid of the unlived life. Can in certain situations mean simply, I thought the bitch was white. which loosely translated means Cracklin' Rosie, get on board, can also refer to a certain kind of necrotic, ulcerated lesion that will afflict organ grinders monkeys in the post-apocalyptic future in the 23rd century. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard. We're going to have to work at this every day, but I want to do that because I want you. I want all of you forever, every day. And is there someone inside you? Is it Captain Howdy? I'm speaking to the person inside of Reagan now. If you are there, you too are hypnotized and must answer all my questions. Come forward and answer me now. Are you the person inside of Reagan? Who are you? The Chilesian sentence can have three completely divergent meanings. It can mean, quote, Veselin Dimitrov's proof of the Schinzel-Zassenhaus conjecture quantifies the way special values of polynomials push each other apart, end of quote. It can mean, quote, my father knew how to make sausage out of bear meat, Lithuanian style, which Stalin loved, end of quote. And it can mean, quote, my chin pimples say hi, end of quote. Literally means, quote, Shreka the movie, end of quote. The Chilesian term for the movie Shrek. It's also become an honorific term for a warlord or godfather who inspires absolute respect and fear among his subordinates. And it can also be used adjectively for particularly brutal acts. An unusually gory, abhorrent killing out on the piazza might be described as, quote, very Shrek the movie, end of quote. Also, on Chilesian home renovation shows, when an unexpected problem arises, something that will require an expensive repair like termite infestation or mold behind the kitchen cabinets or a cracked foundation or a wiring that's not up to code, the property owner or the contractor might exclaim, quote, Shrek the movie, end of quote. It's the equivalent of shit or god damn it. The Chilesian word literally means fetus, but it's also used like bay or shoddy. You might say, fetus, you looked cute in class today, or fetus, could you get me an apple juice, or hey, what up, fetus? Do you want to come over tonight and watch Un Chien Andalou? Or my fetus got mad at me because she caught me looking at lady parts on the internet. Although the official party line of the CMF has always been that the Chilesian language originated with and is based exclusively on the Divine Hermit's shuffling of lettered tiles at the floating casino, i.e. the permutation of letters, some linguists now speculate that the language might derive from myopic misreadings of the Snellen chart. We'll probably never know because the CMF has vowed to enucleate the eyeballs of anyone caught talking to a linguist. In Chilesian is the word for both sex and soup. The homonym's origin is attributed to this old folk tale. An old divine hermit is sitting in his apartment shuffling his tiles. There's a knock on the door. He gets up, opens the door, and there's a voluptuous, scantily clad woman. I'm here for the super sex, she says. I think I'll take the soup, says the divine hermit. Like a ghoulish rim shot, a pair of eyeballs. Like a ghoulish rim shot, a pair of eyeballs hits the window at that very moment. Then there's a lull in the din of recitations as everyone takes note of a bulletin that's streaming across the screens. The World Health Organization has announced that vendors may wirelessly implant paranoid fantasies into your head anytime without your consent. This is greeted with applause, turning into an ovation, a counterintuitive response to somewhat dystopian news. But bear in mind that according to the brochure, the coat of arms of Chilesia features an escutcheon supported by a pterodactyl. In its beak, the pterodactyl clutches a spoken word karaoke screen with the CMF cri de guerre. Pruritus Annie. Outside, a CMF street soldier plows across the piazza on his skateboard, parting a sea of pigeons. A skinny man wearing a ski mask floats into the bar Popo. Everyone averts their eyes in deference. The bar goes silent. In one hand he holds a grenade, in the other a revolver. "Don't make any moves," the armed man says in classical steppe Chilesian, "or father-daughter night gets blown up." It becomes apparent almost immediately that by blown up he means something more festive than thermodynamic. Not only were the gun and grenade fake, they were edible. It's someone's birthday. Edible weapons, akin to edible flower arrangements, are a thing in Kermunkachunk. But he is so much more, and at the same time so much less, than the edible weapons delivery man he is impersonating. He's a freak mutation of a divine hermit, an insane Luftmensch, i.e. a red balloon on a string that's out of its mind. And then one of those wrenching deviations from parallelism or perpendicularity. The bar Popo is momentarily hijacked by this mutant balloon boy for that briefest of instants. This psycho's in total control, and suddenly, we're at the intersection of Wilshire and Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Hills, and the walls are lined with signed photographs of celebrity fathers and daughters. Vincent and Liza Minnelli, Danny and Marlo Thomas, Elvis and Lisa Marie Presley, Frank and Nancy Sinatra, John and Victoria Gotti, Eddie and Carrie Fisher, Tony and Jamie Lee Curtis, Henry and Jane Fonda, Paul and Stella McCartney, John Voight and Angelina Jolie, Francis Ford and Sofia Coppola, Ryan and Tatum O'Neal, Steven and Liv Tyler, Kurt Russell and Kate Hudson, Lenny and Zoe Kravitz, Don and Dakota Johnson, Ozzy and Kelly Osbourne, Lionel and Nicole Richie, Billy Ray and Miley Cyrus, Jean Valjean and Cosette, Thunderbolt Ross and the Red She-Hulk. And then just as suddenly, just as inexplicably, a return to the status quo. Auntie, we're back in Kermunkachunk. We hear the sound of eyeballs hitting the windows. Was this balloon boy simply the latest avatar of the ghost of the dead Puggle, commanding the father to drink, drink, drink? Father, reading phlegmatically from one of the screens. I don't want to spend my last days, my last hours here in this hospital. I want to be at the bar Polpo. Gabby, laughing. You're so drunk you don't even know where you are. Father, right before my father died, all of a sudden, just spontaneously, he started speaking to me in impeccable Chilesian, steppe Chilesian. Scared the shit out of me. Gabby, in Florida? Father, in Florida. Gabby, that's insane. Father, I know, right? Reconsiders for a moment. Maybe it was just gibberish, though. Just a bunch of demented gibberish, I don't know. It's been rumored, but never reliably confirmed, that a CMF sub-faction had, using a machine they'd improvised out of old Toyota Corolla car parts, tried to produce a weaponized font. That is to say, a font that, when read, would induce paranoid fantasies and suicidal ideation in the mind of the reader. The corrupted font was designed to resemble the misfolded shapes of the prions that cause Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. They'd planned on introducing it in optometric eye exams and spoken word karaoke bars, but the leaders of the subfaction came to believe that this was all just way too mawkish, that it was one of those hackneyed sci-fi devices used to depict dystopian anomie and, allegorically, the indomitable human need for connection, and it was abandoned. It didn't help that high on varnish remover fumes, They'd blinded the very neuroscientists and type designers who could have actually helped them weaponize the font in the first place. No, I can't drive this. No, sorry. Gabby, what did your father look like when he died? Father, he was beautiful, actually. His white hair was lustrous and tousled. His skin was luminous, taut, without a crease, like porcelain. And he looked astonished to me, like an astonished little boy, and I was holding him in my arms as the spirit of life left him. And it was stunning how quickly his body, his physical body, which of course had just seconds before been indistinguishable from him, coextensive with him, and had been him, became this kind of useless, obsolete thing, something to be put out with the trash. That's honestly how it felt to me. Gabby, are you scared of dying? Father, I live in absolute dread of dying, not so much because I fear death. I'm ready, I'm accommodated, even eager sometimes. After all, what self-respecting anthropologist isn't intrigued by the prospect of the ultimate terra incognita? I dread dying because I can't bear the thought of it causing you any sadness or pain, of hurting you in some irreparable way. But that really is a supreme, preening form of narcissism, isn't it? To think that your death will constitute the most tragic event in your daughter's life. One from which she'll never, couldn't possibly recover. As if all daughters don't actually recover. As if that recovery isn't just the very way of things. Gabby, how do you know I'm not the exception to the rule, though? And what if they don't all recover? What if it is something some daughters can never recover from? Gabby begins to cry. The father hands her a cocktail napkin to wipe the mascara streaking down her face. Father, when my dad was in Sloan Kettering the first time, this was a week or two after his surgery, he had a very serious crisis. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but he was in the ICU, intubated, unconscious, bleeding internally, etc. But he survived, and a couple of weeks later, I was sitting with him back in New Jersey, and we were talking, and I said, you know, Dad, you almost died that afternoon, and he said, I think I did die. What's it like? I asked. It's very hectic, he said. There's so many people you have to say hello to. Gabby smiles. That's funny, Father. True story. Sometimes it all vanishes. The bar Polpo, the piazza, the floating casino on Lake Little Lake. It's all just gone. A completely extinct world. Then... Ooh. Dwarf?